Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to be talking you guys through some of my very own personal changes, personal transitions and personal experience with training, with exercise and with staying active during pregnancy. If you are new to following or subscribing, I am currently 24 weeks pregnant, so I'm on my second trimester, about to go into my third, and I thought today would be a really helpful time to kind of go through the changes of my personal training and personally how things have been for me, because I know it's different for each and every single woman. I am planning on getting my pre and postnatal if I could speak, pre and postnatal cert very soon. Actually, while I'm pregnant, I would love to study it, but meanwhile I have been researching, I have been studying and kind of learning as I go from other professionals, and really looking into what I need to be cautious about and kind of the changes that I need to personally make, because every single person is so different. So first of all, everybody's first, second and third trimester is going to be totally different. Some of the things that will hold us back from training, from intensity and from just making our gym sessions is obviously the nausea, the sickness, the energy levels. You know, these are all things that impact most pregnant women. Luckily for me, I can say I had no nausea, I had no sickness. I really just had suckish energy. I was really tired, and that started to pick up on the second trimester. So those are going to be some of the things that really do affect our training and decide what time you can train, the frequency that you can train, the intensity that you can train, because obviously if you're sick all the time, you can't think about even going to the gym or exercising, because it's difficult on its own. Even getting to the gym when you're not feeling your best. I know for pregnant mamas that have been through this, you guys know what I'm talking about. Another thing is sleep. Like, you might feel like you're very fatigued, you're very exhausted. Maybe you haven't been sleeping as well because baby, the bump, the discomfort, the pain, you know, this is all stuff that affects all of us, especially when we get into that third trimester, more so about, you know, our sleep and pain and getting up all the time because of discomfort. It's not so prominent on the front end of pregnancy, but it's more prominent on the third and second trimester as you start to get more uncomfortable. And depending on obviously the feelings that you get and the symptoms that you get, some of you might have really bad heartburn, really bad stomach pains, really bad cramps, really bad just sickness, and that might be keeping you up. So your sleep and your exhaustion is going to be a big impact on what you can put in, if you can even train, because I've had a lot of friends that have not been able to train their first trimester until their second trimester because they physically couldn't, right? So for me personally, I have been training through my entire pregnancy. I haven't had any setbacks or any struggles, thankfully, fingers crossed. I have just been listening to my body and taking things a lot easier. And the more I'm learning more about safety, and I'm learning about what is best for not just me, but what is best for baby that is inside my belly, and what is best for that postpartum recovery, because we don't want to put ourselves in a worse position where it's harder for us to recover, because after we give birth and after we've went through such a rough 9 months of producing and creating a human, we want to be able to recover and just get back to reality. And that's not always the case for every single woman. They struggle, and we don't want to make things worse for ourselves. So that's why we have to think about training, we have to think about safety, we have to think about what is best for our pelvic floor, what is best for our core, what is best for our breathing, all of this stuff. And I know for a lot of you this will sound like literal gibberish, because it still kind of does to me, because I'm just getting to know the world of pregnancy, the world of pregnancy training and things like that. Some of the things that have really changed for me is obviously the load that I'm lifting. Like, I am probably lifting less than 50% of what I would usually lift. Before I fell pregnant, I wasn't lifting extremely heavy like I used to back in the day when I was really focusing on building muscle, but I was lifting moderate to heavy, if you know what I mean. So the load definitely had to change, because I had to focus on breathing a lot more. If you're not familiar with breathing in pregnancy, it is very important to keep a safe and a very strong pelvic floor, because we don't want prolapse to happen. We don't want our pelvic floor to get weaker and weaker, and shit just goes wrong when that happens, because it's already weak from carrying a baby for 9 months. So obviously my load had to change, yes. And of course, like, the more I learn about breathing, there's this thing called the connection breath, which is where we're breathing in, we're inhaling in, on the eccentric, which is the lowering part, like think about a muscle lengthening. That's when you're supposed to be breathing in, like you're right, and then you're breathing out as you exert. So for example, like if we're doing a shoulder press, right, the lengthening is when it's coming down, and then the hardest part of the move is getting it back up, so you're supposed to breathe out. So when they talk about the connection breath, we are supposed to have controlled breathing with every single rep. And they say, you know, if you cannot do that load with that correct strategy of breathing, then you need to go lighter. It tells you that you need to go lighter because you're not able to follow that connection breath, right? And the connection breath, like I said, is pretty much where we're breathing in when the muscle is lengthening, and then as the muscle shortens, we breathe out on the exertion. So that's kind of what the connection breath is. It's taken me a very long time to process it because I do not usually breathe like that. You know, we're used to bracing on our core and tightening our six-pack abs. That is not what you want to do in pregnancy. You don't want to be holding your breathing. You want to be inhaling in and then exhaling out. It's kind of like, I heard this term before, it's kind of like a trampoline. When you are lengthening, like when you're coming down in a squat, you want to think about being on a trampoline. Your diaphragm is going down, and then as you squat back up and you're exerting, you're breathing out. So I hope that makes sense. It definitely takes some time to learn it and to familiarize it, but it starts to make sense as to why it's so important for your insides and for your pelvic floor, and for preventing anything bad from happening, because this is safety that we're talking about more than anything. So yes, my load has changed, my breathing has changed, my rest periods have definitely changed. I'm very big on listening to my body, like I said, but I have been having longer rest periods of, you know, 2 minutes, 90 seconds, sometimes a minute, depending on what I'm doing. But my rest periods are relatively long. I'm not doing really any supersets, I'm not doing any high intensity, any jumping, any running, because I was not really doing that before. And we don't want to be dying in training when we're pregnant, because that is not good. You want to be training to a certain level and still have room in the tank for a few more reps. So it's not an RPE difficulty scale of 11 out of 10 when it should only really be 7 or, you know, 8, 6 out of 10. Because in pregnancy, we're not training for physique anymore. We're not training for building muscle. We're not training for losing fat. We are training to stay and maintain what we have. And sometimes accepting that mindset is very, very hard for us women, especially if this is your career, this is what you love, this is what you do. It's hard to take a step back from the aesthetic side of things, building glutes, having a smaller waist, training for strength, and hitting personal bests. This time is about maintaining all that we have built so far and coming back stronger afterwards. It's only for a season, and it's not going to be long. It's just 9 months of our life, and then we can have that better recovery afterwards to get back to where we were. So it's not about training for the looks anymore. This is about your mental health, this is about safety, and this is about maintenance. So leave that out the window. Another thing we have to really think about when training when pregnant, and what I had to think about was, you know, suitable exercises, because a lot of our exercises selection will change, and that's very normal because we have either a tiny bump or we have a huge bump, right? And obviously we know a lot of positions are not suitable for the baby and just for getting up and being comfortable in certain positions. And you know, I can be honest, I was doing a lot of moves on the first trimester that I probably shouldn't have been doing because I didn't know better. But now I know, just for safety reasons. Yes, I can do those moves, but should I? No. For example, like recently, I have switched over from barbell hip thrusts to just dumbbell hip thrusts. I'm not putting it anywhere near my lower abdomen. It's more so sitting on my thighs, so it's nowhere near where the baby could be. And you know, if you're doing barbell hip thrust, it pretty much sits on your hips, but it's still touching your lower abdomen, which is where the baby tends to sit. The further along you get, they sit lower. So that was a big change I had to make. You know, I was training with a barbell still, and you know, I didn't feel bad, I didn't feel terribly uncomfortable. But you know, the more I studied and researched, it's like, you know, I can do this, but should I, for safety reasons? No. And it's not going to really change anything. It's just my ego that I need to set aside. I can't do those hip thrusts for now, but I'll come back to my 3 and 4 plates later. So that's exercise selection is so big. Even when it comes to, you know, our leg press, our leg curls, our lunges, some things will have to change, you know, our stance, our depth, a lot of things. You know, with squats, you're not going to be able to squat as deep, and you shouldn't really squat as deep. Even if you are used to full grass squatting, it's not best for you to go that deep, especially during pregnancy. So you can use like box squats, you can do, you know, half squats, you can just go and stop at a level that's comfortable for you, because it might feel amazing, but internally it might not be so good. So yeah, hip thrust has been a big one for me. A lot of my hip thrust variations I obviously can't do anymore. I use just a dumbbell, single leg, and normal. Leg press is fine as long as I have a wider stance and higher feet, otherwise my belly will be in the way. If we're talking in regards to like bench presses and stuff, we really don't want to be, some people do this, but we really don't want to be doing supine positions where we're laying back, because like flat, like a bench, because it's so hard for us to get up. And you don't want to get up like this, because that can cause diastole, rhabdi, whatever it's called, the ab separation. It makes it worse. Obviously, if we're doing trunk movements and we're trying to jump up too quickly, we want to be rolling onto our side, which I'm sure you guys know when you're pregnant, like it's better to roll onto your side and get up than to try and get up. It's already a struggle for me to get up off the freaking sofa. So it's not best that we do things that make us lay back and then we try to get up, and it's very difficult. So a lot of those kind of things have changed for me with bench presses and stuff like that. I'm still able to do my shoulder presses and stuff, but I want to prevent any doming, any exercises that cause like doming, where my abs, where my stomach is like pretty much like this and it's sitting out. You'll probably have seen it before in a certain position that you've been in. We want to avoid that in any exercises, because again, ab separation, it can make it worse and it can stretch it even further, and obviously that makes it harder after pregnancy to put it back together. I know that a lot of us can avoid it. Most of us get it in some form of way, but if we can minimize it and not stretch too far, whether centimeters and centimeters apart, then that's what we should definitely do. In regards to like, you know, lunges and split squats and stuff, those have all still been fine for me, but I like to use support whenever I can, because I don't have to rely on my stability, and obviously my center of gravity is changing. I'm feeling more weight here, so sometimes it might feel a little bit off to me to try and get back up or to stabilize my, you know, my body and my core. So using support is totally fine. You don't have to, but it definitely makes things easier, especially when we're talking about when we have a bigger baby and a bigger bump that is really pulling us forward, and it makes things a lot more difficult. Trying to think of everything that has really changed for me from exercise wise. I've been doing a lot of cable work, a lot more cables, a lot more lat pull downs, a lot more seated rows, because you want to have as much support as you can while you're pregnant, and just have assistance where you can, so that you don't have to put your body under a whole lot of pressure. Now I see people that do amazing with compounds, with deadlifting, with hip thrusting during pregnant, and that's great. That works for them, but for me personally, I have to listen to what works for me and do what I think is best and what supports me and baby right now. So yes, suitable exercise selection. Now this will be different for every single person, but for the majority of us women, we have a belly blocking us, so we shouldn't really be doing anything on a bench where we're leaning forward, because our stomach is going to block us, or anything that puts stress down here, and also anything laying back, because it's super hard to get back up again, and I know you feel me on that. Another thing that plays role into my training during the pregnancy and right now is what I was doing before. Now they say you shouldn't be adding in any new crazy moves when you're pregnant that your body's not already used to. So if you haven't trained in the past 6 months and you're going into the gym, it is going to be harder for you, and you are going to have to think a lot smarter, because your body is not exactly used to what you were doing, because you might have trained 6 months, a year, 2 years before. Obviously you can continue for the most part doing what you were doing pre-pregnancy if you were already training, you're already active, but you have to think a little bit more cautiously when you weren't training before, and the moves that you do and making sure they feel good. If something does not feel good, you need to take it out and you need to replace it with a substitution. And Google is your best friend here, YouTube is your best friend. That is where you find literally all your answers these days. They have tons of information. I know a lot of information out there is overwhelming and discouraging because it's like it pulls you in all different directions, but try to stick with information from legitimate sources, professionals, and people that are certified. Obviously I am not pre and postnatal certified, but I am learning from other people that are, and I'm just trying to give you guys guidance on what exactly you might want to do, what you might want to apply, and what I have personally been doing and the kind of changes and experiences that I have went through myself, because I have been getting a lot of questions on this and kind of just my training alone and, you know, my motivation. But everything goes back to safety for me right now. It might not have been as prominent in my head at the beginning, like safety, because I thought I could just keep training whatever way I wanted to. But there comes a time and a place where you have to think about longevity, safety, postpartum, you know, recovery, your pelvic floor, your core, the weakness. Like, we don't want to put ourselves in a worse position, so everything is about safety. And a lot of moves can injure you, can injure the baby. Obviously it depends on the move and how extreme the move is, but that's why I wanted to personally remove barbell hip thrust, because I was starting to feel a little bit more uncomfortable with it and I wasn't exactly certain. And then I had studied more into it and I was like, you know what, I shouldn't. Let's just stick with dumbbell and I can come back strong and beasting out in a few months time when I am fully recovered. I have all the time in the world to lift heavy, to build my glutes. Now is about this new season and this new blessing in my life. So yeah guys, I hope that this kind of gives you a bit of insight into what I personally have experienced and what I personally have been doing. Now, like I said, every single woman has different symptoms, different impacts, different feelings with pregnancy, but this is what has been great for me. This is what has been safe for me. And obviously another one I forgot to mention is, like, you know, your appetite. A lot of our energy obviously comes from what we're eating and our appetite. So in my first trimester, I was not eating enough. I wasn't hungry. My appetite was extremely low and my exhaustion was like, my motivation was done. I did not want to go to the gym. I did not want to eat. I did not want to focus on my business. I was feeling really unmotivated and quite frankly a little sad. I think it was just a lot of hormonal changes for me personally. But your appetite can obviously have a big impact on your energy levels, how you're feeling, your body image, things that nobody ever talks about. But you obviously are going to go through different things than me. You might have an insanely crazy appetite where you're hungry all the time in the first, second, third trimester, whereas other people might not have an appetite in that first trimester and they might not have the energy that they would like to have to go to the gym. So guys, do what is best for you, do what feels good to you, do what feels normal to you, and try to just get in a little. It doesn't have to be a workout, it can literally be a walk. You can literally go for a 5-minute walk, 20-minute walk, 30-minute walk. Do what is best for you. Your body will thank you later. And even if you can't get to the gym, you'll be able to get to the gym the next week or the next month or in a couple of months. Hopefully a couple of months is not the case. I know that it's just different depending on our bodies and depending on our baby and what they want to put us through. But I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any questions or anything, just pop them below and I will definitely get back to you. And for more on my journey, please subscribe and follow my Instagram, which I will link right here and tag. I'll see you guys on the next video.